The AxPx podcast is brought to you by Charming Beard Coffee. Go to charmingbeard.com and enter in the code AXPX when you buy a bag of their single roasted coffees and get 10% off of your order. Charming Beard Coffee, quality small batch single origin coffee for the discerning coffee drinker. Beard not necessarily required. This week's podcast is also brought to you by Brewski Me. Brewski Me is a beer drinker's best friend. Rate and review new beers, discover new brews and breweries, and find out what your friends are drinking. Head over to brewski.me and check it out for yourself. Brewski Me. Don't drink alone, drink with friends.
Don't cry. You can rely on me, honey.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the AxPx podcast, episode 17. I'm your host, Sean DeReger, and with me, Joey Avalos.
What's up, Sean? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's been a crazy week, and
like always.
Yeah, like always. Every week's crazy. For those of you who are just joining or just catching up with the show, I'm married and have 3 kids and a full-time job, and my wife works full-time, so my weeks are always crazy. So I guess just assume that from here on out.
Exactly right.
No, I mean, as far as news goes as well, we had a pope resign, which is like the first time in 600 years that's happened. So I know the Catholic Church has been up and trying to figure that out,
scrambling,
and I believe this is the next pope they choose is going to be the last pope, because according to some prophecy, the world's going to end with this specific numbered pope. So
right.
I'm gonna try to dig up more information, and next week on our show, because I think we're just going to do you and me next week.
Cool.
I want to find some more information about that prophecy and stuff like that, because it's been kind of debunked not debunked, but the Vatican, of course, says, oh, that's not a real prophecy.
Right.
And then Earth just got barely missed by being hit by an asteroid, so that was awesome.
That was great, man. Yeah, I guess Russia had a little after effects of that a little bit.
Well, I don't know what happens with these meteors. I don't know if little pieces go along with it or whatever, but yeah, Russia, people in Russia got a little sonic boom, and my friend Brad said that there were fiery lights reported in San Francisco and somewhere else. So
I saw that.
Some research, and we'll bring all this to the table next week. We're gonna kind of have a free for all type conversation. What I'm gonna try to do is try to set up a Google Hangout, and I want to try to do it and record and broadcast live as we talk.
Fun,
so, just for maybe once a month we do that, and I don't know how it works. Maybe listeners can join in and actually interact. So that'll be a fun little experiment. But today we're talking beer.
Yum.
So, which is very close to my heart. I do enjoy a good brew every now and then.
And in your hand right now, too.
In my hand, I have it's a Trader Joe's. It's brewed by a Belgian. They brew Belgian brews. Unibrow out of Canada. So every year they do a vintage ale, and this is the 2011 vintage ale, brewed with spices and natural flavors.
Is that some of the stuff you gave me that night I stayed at your house?
No, this stuff is no.
Now, what was that stuff? That was good, man. I gotta get that.
That was a lighter Belgian ale, and it's the same kind of thing. It's a higher alcohol content, and it's more of a sipping beer.
That's probably why I liked it. Huh?
Yeah. All right. So let's jump right into this show today. Beer with a purpose. Reclamation Brewery wants to reclaim the reputation of beer from the sloppy, party, tasteless beer that lines the floors of sports bars and football stadiums. Fine craft beer can actually contribute to community, something that friends and family can rally around and enjoy. A pastor, his son, and close family friend decided to take up this task and help reclaim beer's reputation. Pastor John Smith, his son Ben Smith, and friend Ben Duncan took their idea to Kickstarter and hoping to raise enough money to get this unique brewery off the ground. The question is, can Jesus and beer coexist? Today we have Ben, aka Dennis Smith, on the show to talk about Jesus and beer. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Glad to have you on the show. When I first found out about your guys' brewery, I think it was when your Kickstarter campaign was ramping up in November. So okay. I made a mental note. I was like, we need to get these guys on the show and talk about it because your dad is a pastor. And the funny thing is, like, when I was lived in Garner, Iowa, and the Lutheran pastor he brewed his own beer. And I know that depending what church you went to, that was either, people gave it thumbs up or people kind of looked down on it. So I figured it'd be interesting to get you on the show and talk to you about it. But I want to kind of lay the groundwork, as I always kind of do for these conversations before we get into anything theological, Ben. So can you just give us a little bit of your personal background and like what you did before you even were trying to jump into to do a brewery?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I actually graduated from college in 2010, so I haven't been out that long, and worked some odd jobs and some steadier jobs doing retail and food service and things like that. Since I've been out of college, I have been working as a recruiter. Don't necessarily want to name where I work, just for some different reasons, but have been working as a recruiter and been enjoying that greatly. I'd also run a small gaming website and did a podcast and everything along with that. So that's kind of my background.
Yeah.
Our background as far as the brewery kind of started with we wanted to make some wine, so we tried that out. It took way too long for us, and we're very much so impatient. So we started making beer, gradually doing more and more complicated things.
Yeah.
People encouraged us to keep going and make it a bigger thing, and we had that desire and that kind of business savvy and sales and things like that as well. So kind of took off from there.
Was there a specific idea that came to you to start a brewery? Was there a catalyst to actually jumping into that? As far as, apart from just doing wine.
Sure. No, not really. It was kind of like, hey, we seem to be pretty good at this. People keep telling us it's great. Even people we don't know, even people who didn't know we made it said it was great.
Right.
Which was awesome. So, it just kind of came one day. We said we should make a brewery, and we were like, oh yeah, haha. And a couple months later, we talked about it again. Oh yeah, that's funny. And then next thing you know, we're an LLC and
nice.
Paperwork filed with the state and on the venture to kick it off.
Yeah. Was it your idea? Was it your dad's idea initially, or was it all just kind of like an organic kind of, you all kind of?
I have to say I don't really remember whose idea it was. I know I'm probably the one who pushed the hardest to get going when we did, but I think it would have happened naturally regardless.
I read I looked at you guys' documentary, and you guys do talk about taking a trip to Ireland. And I wanted to discuss like the beer culture as compared to, coming from the United States, we're very much, sports and, going out to the bars, the sports bar, slamming down as many beers as you possibly can. What's the difference between the United States and, say, a country like Ireland?
Yeah, well, Ireland's kind of funny because at the same time they have a really robust beer culture and appreciate it. They're also known for being drunks.
Right.
So, I mean, there is the good and the bad there too. Mm-hmm. But, in Ireland, it's almost like when we were there, we noticed it was almost like a family thing. Like, now we would take our families to a decent restaurant and have a nice time. There, the pub is kind of a community gathering place. And it's a place where you go and there might be, there'll be people drinking and maybe eating, but they're mostly sitting around talking about life and about things that matter to them, frivolous things possibly. Different things happened when we were there. There were times where we would just go in and be sitting there for an hour and all of a sudden 10 people pull out instruments from under the table and just start playing and singing. And it's just kind of a community area I'm sure there is the carousing and drunkenness that we see here in America, just the same in places, but the majority of people were there to enjoy a good drink and enjoy some friends and some discussion.
It seems that it doesn't have the kind of taboo that it does in the States, especially when religion gets involved.
Right. Absolutely.
So I know that there's, Ireland still, these countries still do have their form of abuse, but it seems like the U.S., it seems to be kind of a different animal. Do you have any ideas to what could contribute to our country's abuse of spirits and alcohol? Is it the age limit thing? Is it?
I certainly think that the age limit has something to do with it. I know that, I don't think it was ever alcohol for me. I didn't, my first drink was on my 21st birthday, and I was very unlike most of my peers for that reason. But it seems to me that most people want to do things they're not allowed or supposed to do.
Right.
And all the more. So I think that certainly has something to do with it. I think part of the reason why in other countries it's the problems are much less prevalent could come from the family. It seems as if our families in America, and of course I don't know other countries, just what I've read, our families are much more segmented. We're together much less. We depend on each other much less. We spend much less time. And I think that the family atmospheres in other countries where people care for their family, and when their parents get old, they move in with them, and things like that, just encourage that, you know what, I'm drinking a beer. I know you're only 12 years old, but you're going to have a beer too. And I'm going to teach you how to drink it. Where we don't have that here, it's no, you can't have it until you're 21, and then we expect you to get destroyed your first day of being 21. Right. So there's just certainly the family aspect that I think contributes to it. So a little bit of that and a little bit of the I can't do this, so I want to more. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, definitely. I know that I was raised with wine was okay. We would, I'd be like 12 or 13, and on holidays and stuff like that, I'd be allowed to have a little bit of wine with my meal and stuff like that.
Right.
But it's definitely, kids are not even allowed to even talk about alcohol or drink any alcohol, or even if a dad wants to give his son a little bit of beer, it's kind of frowned upon. It's definitely a different culture.
Absolutely.
What would your like say things change in the U.S., or what would you like what kind of beer culture would you like to cultivate with your own family?
Yeah, I think legalities aside, let's pretend like there aren't any. I think that teaching children from a young age, and teaching others from any age really, that beer is, to me now, beer isn't taboo anymore. Where it kind of used to be when I was younger. It's like, hey, would you like a glass of water, a Coke, or a beer? And I think that's kind of what I would like to see to some extent within the family, that it's no longer like dad's drinking beer, we got to watch out.
Right.
Something like that. It is becoming more of a culture of beer and appreciation of beer that I've noticed. Yeah. Specifically around the Pittsburgh area and further out as well, where people don't just go to the bar. Well, not that doesn't happen, but specific types of places where the atmosphere is different. And what I would like to see, they go to enjoy, to hang out with friends, to buy a $4.50 or $6 beer, to really just enjoy it and appreciate the taste, rather than just going to, hey, let's go get loaded.
Yeah.
And I think just that respect of the drink as an important part of our society. They claim that beer has saved and founded America, and it saved the cultures across the world. I'm not expecting that kind of thing to happen, but I certainly would love to see beer become less of a freak show or a sideshow, right, and more of a regular occurrence with appreciation attached.
Yeah. I know that in Southern California here, we have a lot of kind of microbreweries popping up. Even Northern California. Out here there's a brewery called Stone Brewery, and they cultivate kind of a, it's a more of a, not higher class, but an upper level of beer drinking. And their whole facility, if you go and visit them, it's in Escondido. It's kind of like visiting a winery. There's a place to eat. There's fine dining. You do some beer tasting. And there's a lot of wineries out here too. So it seems a lot of breweries are kind of going along the lines of like a winery and having their tasting rooms and stuff like that. So it's definitely, a very cool thing that I think I would like to see happen more and more,
Yeah, absolutely.
So Ben, what is it about beer that you're passionate about? What is it about it for you?
I guess it's the flavor and the variety. Those two things combined. The variety is incredible to me, even compared to other types of drink. Like take soft drinks, for example. Yeah, you can get a variety of carbonated soft drinks, but each of them kind of still have that root flavor, or maybe you only have so many different kinds. With beer, it seems like the possibilities for combinations are endless, and many of them are still end up being good. So I think just the fact that I can try, even if it's the same style, I can try a different stout tomorrow than the one I tried today, and it's going to taste different. I'm going to taste different notes of flavors in the beer. I'm going to notice different scents that I didn't notice before, and I think that just the variety and the flavor in them. Knowing also with specifically craft beer that there's really been time and effort put into this recipe. It's not made to just be able to sell hundreds of cases of it at a time. It's to please the end user, and most of the time the people making it enjoy it just as much as the people buying it, which is great.
Did you find your appreciation increase once you guys started brewing it yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only being able to see the complexity with recipes, being able to see that sometimes we've got to brew what we're going for 2 or 3 times before it tastes right. And just, different styles. If you're familiar with IPAs, India Pale Ales, I was not a fan at all. And we knew, none of us were. Yeah. And we knew, listen, people love IPAs. We've got to make one. Let's try it. And we made one, and all of a sudden, I start liking that IPA. And then I start liking other IPAs. And so just even within the styles and different things like that, my appreciation has grown immensely just from making it myself.
Yeah.
And just seeing the work that goes into it and appreciating the different notes of different tastes and things like that. It's a really cool process.
Cool. Let's go ahead and take our first break here, and we'll come back. And I know Joey has some questions. I'll turn it over to Joey for a bit. But today's band that I'm featuring, they're Tumbledown, and if you know of the band AxPx, Mike Herrera, the singer from AxPx, started up kind of like an alt country punk band, and they're great. And they have a song called "Let's Drink," so I figured it'd be appropriate for this conversation today. And we'll come back right after this talking more with Ben Smith about Reclamation Brewing Company. But right now, this is Tumbledown with "Let's Drink." It's off of their self-titled album. Available on iTunes. You're listening to the AxPx podcast.
Let's drink till we fall down. Let's drink, I'll see you on the ground. Let's drink till we fall down. There's nothing else to do here in this town. I try to talk to you, there's nothing right that I can say. There's nothing good that I can do, my stupid mouth gets in the way. The only thing that I can think to say is let's drink till we fall down. Let's drink, I'll see you on the ground. Let's drink till we fall down. There's nothing else to do in this town. Don't make up your mind unless your mind's made up on me. I'll take a Greyhound bus and ride from sea to shine and say, if only to get back and say to you, let's drink till we fall down. Let's drink, I'll see you on the ground. Let's drink till we fall down. There's nothing else to do in this town. I gotta tell you, you're the best thing that my eyes have ever seen. Girl, you look so good, you damn near knocked my eyes right out clean. Yeah, 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 let's drink, I'll see you on the ground. Let's drink till we fall clown. Let's drink till we fall down. There's no one else I'd rather do, nothing else, just me and you. Nothing else to do here in this town. There's nothing else to do here in this town.
That was Tumble Down with the song Let's Drink. It's off of their, I think, 2008 album, self-titled album, which is available on Skype and iTunes, 2009 actually, and it's awesome. So we'll be hearing more from Tumble Down a little bit later on during the show, but we're back talking with Ben Smith. He is the co-founder of Reclamation Brewing Company, and I'm going to turn this over to Joey. Man, you have some questions.
Yeah, I do, man. I actually have a confession first off. Man, I'm ignorant when it comes to beers. I'm just going to say that right now. And I'm actually, one of the main reasons why I like this podcast is because, you know, I get a free education with the guests we bring on here. So really, I'm picky with beers. I like Mexican beers. I'm half Hispanic. Maybe that's a culture thing. But I want to be educated by you, Ben. What types of beers should I try? Or what types of beers are your favorite?
Yeah, I mean, here's some of my favorites that just the different styles. I'm a big fan of stouts, a huge fan of porters. Lately, like I mentioned before, the IPAs have been growing on me, and I'm really enjoying them. Two different styles that I've just barely touched the surface of, but really want to get into more are Belgians and sours. So those are kind of where I'm at right now and really are enjoying. I've noticed that I no longer, I still appreciate them, but I no longer really enjoy lagers.
Yeah.
Lagers for me are just kind of not where I want to be on the radar anymore. So
For those of us listening, can we expand on like what each of those are? Like a lager is basically kind of like a Bud Light, Budweiser, correct?
Yeah, like the Dos Equis that I drink all the time is a lager.
sure, and yeah, there are smaller craft breweries that no one's ever heard of that make lagers that are good as well, but they're typically going to be paler and a little bit lighter in flavor. Around here, the biggest beer I'd say around here, other than Bud Light and Miller Lite, things like that, is Yuengling. I don't know if you've ever heard of Yuengling, but it's a great historic company. They make a great product. And it's kind of like if you're from Pennsylvania, you're drinking Yuengling. But that's kind of the biggest one around here, and it's a lager. Stouts are going to typically be more, and stouts and porters, I actually get confused at times as a confession. They're very similar to me. But they're typically, stouts are what they say they are. They're thick and they're hearty, and it's almost like eating a meal, and you could pretty much you could pretty much survive for weeks on just drinking stout beers. So they're kind of a better a step up for me. Like when I'm drinking a stout is when I feel happy the most. IPAs, India Pale Ales, actually given the name for they had to take them from England to India, and in order to get them there, they had to chock them full of hops, one of the ingredients in beers, to keep them preserved. Because of that, they have a very unique flavor. I hate modifying the word unique, but I can't think of a better way to say it. They just have a different flavor. Some of them are piney. Some of them are not. They're just they're made with rye sometimes. I don't know how to really explain it.
They're very hoppy, but if you don't drink beer, it's hard to kind of hard to get what hoppy means. But it's more of a out of all the beers I've tried, it's more bitter, I guess. Yeah, just has the most like the hops flavor. I don't know.
Right.
Interesting.
And then sours are interesting. I just tried sours last year. I was beta testing this app called Brewski Me, and it's basically like a Foursquare of beer for beer. And you kind of log what you're drinking. And so I was trying a whole bunch of different types of beers, and I gained about 15 pounds. But I had a sour for the first time. But they're very, well, you're using the word unique again, but a very unique taste. Kind
of sour, kind of tart. Almost acidic to some extent.
Yeah, very good. It's one of those. It's richer, so I can't have it too much. I think I drank my fill of sours, and I think I'm done with those for a while.
The funny thing I find about sour beers, they're like intentionally messed up. The way they're made is they allow wild yeast into the brew, so it's like bacteria intentionally getting in there to mess with the flavor, makes it good. I don't understand it, but it's it's science. So
that's interesting, man. Well, that's the thing with me. As an ignorant beer drinker, like a craft beer, when you say craft beer, I don't know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know what the difference between craft beer and all that stuff. So in your definition, what makes a beer a craft beer?
Yeah, usually craft beer are going to be made by smaller breweries, small brewing operations. I'd say one of the biggest things that's known about them is that they're innovative, different twist on old styles, kind of. You're going to be using the traditional ingredients such as barley and yeast and hops and water, but also a lot of times craft beer is going to expand on that and add other things in, chocolate malts and just different flavors of barley and different styles of ingredients that you wouldn't typically find in traditional style beers. The other thing about craft breweries and reclamation brewing is no different. Is we want to be plugged into our communities, be tight with the people who enjoy our beer. Not that we don't want to be world known and people enjoy our beer all over the world, but at home we're all about the people around us. Basically, I'd say the biggest thing is it's small operations and innovative. Typically, the bigger companies now are going to tell you they're innovative, and they're going to tell you on their commercials about all the different really hard work and thought processes that go into their beers. When it comes down to it and you actually do some investigating, that's really just not the case. A lot of times it's let's get the most beer out of these ingredients for the least money and make the biggest profit. So you could say I'm not a fan of some of the bigger guys, but I certainly see a more robust community within the craft brewing area.
Sam Adams is one of those that their commercials are very much geared towards to make them seem more small scale, which I think they started small scale.
Sam Adams just they just reached 5% of the craft brewing market. And craft brewing as a whole is still only accounting for about 6% of all beer sales in the U.S. So I would still consider Sam Adams a craft brewery, though they're huge. Right. Many people are like, no, they're not craft brewers anymore. But, they I think they actually still care about the innovation. Whereas, I'm just going to say like Budweiser or Coors or something like that. It's not as much about that. They spill more beer on the floor than we'll make in 5 years. Yeah.
When did you start becoming more interested in kind of craft beer? I know for me it was during college, and I like you didn't really have my first beer until I was 21, and just I think I take that back. I may have been 20. I know I graduated college. No, I graduated high school. Never mind, I take that back. I had my first beer with my parents when I was 21. It was in college, and I kind of, it was just like you said, like it was always forbidden for me, and all of a sudden here I am at college going to these parties, and there's just alcohol everywhere. So sure. I didn't know any better, and I would drink, like Keystone Light and junk like that, and I hated it. I couldn't stand, beer. Ugh. And then I started really getting interested in beer when I started working for a restaurant called Bennigan's, and they had like 100 different beers, and that's when I got my beer education, and that's when I think turned me into a beer snob. So by the time I hit 21, it was only a couple years. I hit 21. I was like, I would bring my own beer to a party. Like I would go to my local liquor store and grab some I don't even remember, but I would always come to a party with my own 6-pack. When did you start getting more interested in kind of the craft beers as opposed to just, drinking what's there?
It's probably only been about 3 years, probably. I guess I've been drinking for about 4 years. And, probably about a year into that, I was like, all right, I got to try something good. Yeah, just kind of got exposed to more and more craft beers, and I guess it's just been real recent. 3 years every month I'm trying something brand new.
Yeah, well. That's what's fun. There's always a new beer to try, like always.
Absolutely,
man. You guys are brave, man. I'm gonna have to get hang out hang out with people like you more often, man.
You got to come out, Joey.
I know, man.
We'll hit up Stone and we'll do a little beer tour.
You got to class me up, Sean. Class me up, man. All right. Well, Sean mentioned earlier about on your website you have a documentary about starting a Kickstarter campaign to raise money to launch your brewing company, and you kind of left it on a cliffhanger. And I don't know if you guys met your goal, and if not, what did you learn from the Kickstarter campaign, and has it benefited you anyways if you didn't meet your goal?
Yeah, all great questions. The first part is that documentary is filmed by our good friend Brandon Rowdy Bush. He just approached us and said, I want to do a documentary about you guys starting the brewery. Let's do it. And then when we decided we were going to go the Kickstarter route, that just became a natural part of the documentary. So it's more about us, but it happens to just coincide a lot with the Kickstarter campaign. And then the third part is going to be finished once we're open. So that's how that'll work. The Kickstarter campaign was not successful in the sense that we didn't meet our goal of $35,000. We fell short. We got a little over half of what we were going for. But just fell short. A lot of things went wrong. A lot of things went well, of course, too. But we had several competitors in the area, or within an hour or two of us, also launched their Kickstarter campaigns within weeks before we did ours. Ooh. And we already had the date set and ready to go. The guy who was originally supposed to film our promotional video just did not meet our expectations or fulfill his promises or anything. So we actually had to scrap it and do a new video the night before launch because we told newspapers and so many people had written about us launching.
Oh, man.
That was awful. So that kind of went against us. Ended up, we used the documentary once it was released, the first part of it as the video. But and, that was right around the time when Hurricane Sandy hit. So tons of people were donating money to that, combined with all the other things. And, of course, I don't blame people for donating money to people who need the help rather than to get us started as a business. But it just certainly didn't help our progress at all. So we had a lot of support. We had so much written about us, and actually still a few interviews to come from different newspapers and large magazines that are talking to us as well. So the good things about it, it got a ton more people to know about us. We were able to do many, many more tastings through it. Plenty of people said, hey, I saw you guys in the newspaper or on Kickstarter, things like that. So it was certainly successful in that aspect. We just didn't get the money we needed.
Wow, man! I actually see a new reality series coming out of here, man.
Yeah,
some kind of brew wars or something. Is it friendly competition, or do you guys have some animosity? Because I would love to see that on TV. I'm actually going to call some people.
Yeah, no, I mean as far as the other breweries, you mean?
Yeah, you were talking about the other breweries that are starting up companies and stuff.
No, we don't have any animosity towards them at all. They were doing what they should have been doing and trying to get the money. It just didn't help us out at all. I don't think we have any animosity or anyone has any animosity at all towards us either.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Starting drama. Yeah.
Ben, do you find that when you meet other brewmasters and stuff like that there's kind of a camaraderie as opposed to, competition?
Oh yeah, for sure. There's actually the building that we're going to be moving into here in the beginning of March that we're signing a lease for soon. There's actually another brewery opening up several blocks down. And they're from the town, and they've been there a little while and been working on getting it open. And between, you'd think if anything, you would find animosity between somebody who's moving in 2 blocks from you or 3 blocks from you. They've been nothing but, congratulatory and maybe they hate us deep down. I don't know. But they referred us to another, they referred us to an event that they weren't able to make, that they weren't able to do. So they referred us to be there. And so, I mean, I think craft brewers realize that we're so small still. We need each other. Also, the fact that if I go somewhere on vacation, I might drive an hour out of my way to go visit a craft brewery. Uh-huh. If I know that there's 2 or 3 there close by that I can just hit them all, I'm definitely going to go instead of just maybe. So most of the time they work well together and nearby. So we certainly that we know of have no animosity or hard feelings towards anyone or from anyone in the area, especially.
I see the same sort of thing with like local vineyards and vintners. I don't even know the term, but I live in the Temecula Valley, Temecula Inland Empire area. So Temecula just has tons of wineries, and there's you go to wine country. There's
Sure.
every mile there's a new winery, and they all show up at events. There's a big wine festival, So yeah, I see. There's a lot of similarities between. Gosh, what is the term for someone who makes wine? Is it vintner? Vintner? I don't even know.
I actually am not familiar.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Winery owners.
There you go.
But yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, it's funny because whenever people like come into my house and see my whole cabinet full of different beer bottles from different breweries, or they hear that I'm like, seeking out certain beers or whatever, it's kind of like, oh yeah, beer. You're one of those guys. But whenever somebody talks about how much they enjoyed this fine wine and how they went to a wine tasting, nobody's like, oh, you're a drunk. They're like, oh, you must be sophisticated. And I think that people are starting to realize more and more that beer culture isn't all football games and college parties. It's a culture of people who just enjoy a product.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. It seems like Pittsburgh is really open to the craft brewing industry. I mean, do you see? You feel like it's the perfect place to kickstart your company, or would you guys think that it would be better off moving, starting in a different part of the country, or?
Right now, during the winter, we certainly think the Bahamas would be a great place to start.
That's a good answer.
But no, we love the area.
Right.
We certainly wish that we were in an area that was a little more affluent.
Right.
Pittsburgh is, it's an old steel town. There's plenty of low income and poverty that is around, but the area is receptive. Really, it's kind of beneficial. I'm not a native of the Pittsburgh area. I've been here for about 15 years, but when I moved here, one of the things I noticed was that people are immensely loyal.
Right.
So that's only helpful to us if we're from the area, doing things in the area. And we know that the people around are going to be loyal to us. Mm-hmm. And that's really helpful. So yeah, the community is certainly a thriving one, especially the beer community. Lots of places popping up around Pittsburgh to serve craft beer. Places built around it. So yeah, it doesn't feel like a tough market to break into. I guess we'll see after our first year of actual sales and production.
Well, I got that feeling. I got that feeling when I went to Pittsburgh. It has that big city, but it still has that small town charm
Absolutely.
to it. The people there are really cool.
That's where I got my first tattoo. Was in Pittsburgh.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, first real one, first actual tattoo studio, other than like a friend's friend tattooing something black and white on me. All right, we're going to jump into our second break here. Got another song from Tumble Down. This is off of their newest album. Came out in 2010. This is the title track off the album. It's called Empty Bottle. We'll be back talking to Ben right after this.
We drink it all in Bremerton. The bar
That was Mike Herrera's alt-country punk band, Tumble Down, with the song Empty Bottle. It's off of the album of the same name that came out in 2010. You can find that on Spotify, and you can also find that on iTunes or Amazon, pretty much anywhere that sells music. Great album from them, and I highly recommend it. Recommend both their albums. And side note, due to me trying to get permission to play these songs, we may be having Mike Herrera on the podcast probably sometime in March, so I'm kind of nailing that down. So that was a kind of a little happy accident that
That's
came
cool.
along with me just trying to get permission, because I knew that it's more independent, but I like to get permission for stuff that we're playing. So that was they're very cool to happen out of all this. And of course, the songs, the subject matter of the songs, it's funny, Ben, because I was tweeting back and forth with Mike, and I said the song titles, and you said, "Hey, that's not really what we're all about."
Yeah. I knew you were just going for the theme of it too. So.
Yeah.
And I think Mike laughed and said he agreed.
Totally.
So, yeah.
And it's just kind of it was kind of just really funny. But I want to just take the time just to let us know what is Reclamation Brewery's goal. Like, why did you come up with the name? What is your guys' goal as a brewing company?
Sure. Reclamation Brewing Company kind of we went through a huge iteration of different names and different styles of names, and all of us hating one, or one of us loving it and the other two hating it, or vice versa. Ended up coming to Reclamation because we said, what are we about? What do we want to do? And we kept using the word, take back the beer industry and help redeem it and things like that, and just none of those names would work out. So we talked about, let's reclaim the culture of beer. Let's reclaim the beer back from the people who have taken it and turned it into a watered down mess. Let's help be a part of this movement that is thriving to reclaim brewing as a profession, as a hobby, as just something to go and enjoy. And that's kind of how we came up with the name. Our mission is, like I just stated, right alongside with that, we want to make great beer that people are going to enjoy, that people are going to like. We want to educate people on what beer is all about, what we think beer is all about, what goes into it, and what the different flavors they're tasting are. We just want to help take that back, instead of people rolling down to the local beer distributor and picking up a 30-pack of stuff they've never even known anything about. They just know that it's cheap. So that's kind of where we're at and what we want to do as far as the company goes.
We found it very interesting, though. I mean, it seems like there's a little bit more to your guys' brewery too. That there's this faith aspect to it. Your father, I believe, he's a Reformed Baptist pastor. Is he still, a pastor, or is he working somewhere else right now? Or
yeah, he is not. And I was going to tell you that beforehand when I saw some of the show notes and some of the questions you might be asking. I thought it'd be more interesting to talk about on the show, though. Right. There were just some issues and some unhappy people at our church already for different reasons. Right. As you know, I'll complain about my own people, as we Christians like to do. We're very unhappy with different things. And when it came down to it, whenever some of the information went public, even though certain men in the church knew about our beer, they drank our beer, they enjoyed our beer, they talked about buying our beer, used it as a reason to kind of force him out of the position, saying other people want to prove and things like that. And so, of course, another time I have to defend my people, although I don't know that there's much of a defense for that action. But Christians being who we are, we're just ordinary people like everybody else with a different set of beliefs and a savior. But so he's not a pastor. At least he doesn't have a pastorate right now. He's working for another company, or for a company that he's just working to kind of support himself and my mother and sister until we get the brewery up and running fully. But I think he has aspirations to once again take a pastorate in the future. Mm-hmm. But I just thought I'd talk about that. It is interesting because you asked, does it interfere with his day job, or does it affect his day job? And it certainly did. It it was a catalyst for a bunch of other things, in which he gave up, or I guess you could say lost his day job of being a pastor.
Ben, could you explain, because there's different types of denominations of Christianity.
Sure.
He was a Reformed Baptist pastor. I have a friend who's he's a Reformed something, and they smoke pipes and drink scotch on their lunch breaks. The pastor staff.
Sure.
What, as far as like when you say Reformed Baptist, are they very much against alcohol? What's the lines of that the Reformed Baptist denomination? What are the kind of boundaries they've set up for themselves?
Sure. Interestingly enough, Reformed Baptist is not necessarily a denomination.
Okay.
Baptist would certainly be, though there's different branches of Baptist, and
Right.
and typically Baptists are thought to be more conservative and really by the community at large closed-minded.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't deny that as a former mainline Baptist, I guess you could say. Reformed Baptists are typically churches that exist, and maybe there's some small denominations, but that believe it's more of a description of a certain set of doctrine than a denomination.
Okay.
And it's the doctrine that most hold to would be called something of a Calvinistic doctrine. Kind of named after some of the beliefs of and teachings of I think Jesus, but of John Calvin. Talking about different aspects of whether God picks his people or whether we pick God, or whether we have sin from the beginning or if we're naturally good, and things like that. So just a certain set of theology, which of course, if you guys want, we can delve into more.
Totally can.
Yeah.
So that's what the show's all about.
Yeah, sure. But basically, just Reformed Baptists, we were an independent church, not really attached to a denomination, but holding to things that traditional Baptist and people coming out of the Reformation taught, and things like that. Baptist being Baptistic, being baptism by immersion, showing our belief in Christ through being baptized by dunked in the water, as opposed to Presbyterians who would sprinkle water for baptism. Right. So yeah, I guess that's kind of a brief little snippet of what Reformed Baptist would be. Yeah, I think I answered the question. I'm not sure.
No, yeah.
So as far as the church went, was drinking preached as being? I mean, obviously your dad wouldn't be preaching that it's a sin, but was it just kind of? Was that the problem where most of the people in the church, and if I don't know if there's deacons or anything like that, as far as the hierarchy or the the church politics go?
Sure.
Was it kind of with that church was drinking kind of gray area? Was that the problem?
No, I would say it was the opposite.
Okay.
We used wine for our communion services. Okay. The elders and deacons in the church, went places and drank beers together. Uh-huh. As I mentioned before, many of the people in our church had drank our beer specifically, and I think it came down to there were more issues at hand. And many of them, I think, were falsifications. There may have been some truth in some of them. All that aside, they used this as kind of this is looked down upon. You shouldn't do this to give the church a bad name. And I just want to say who that wasn't coming to our church was still not going to come because the pastor, or was going to anymore not come because the pastor was drinking beer. Most of the time, people who don't like Christians, if they found out Christians were drinking beer, would be like, oh, maybe they're not, maybe there is something more to them, kind of how I got your attention, I guess. So it was really just a big mess. They used the brewery angle, in my opinion, as almost like a scapegoat, as opposed to the real reasons, which I'm still not even sure what the hell they were, Right. People are fickle, and myself included in that. If they want to be mad about something, they'll be mad about anything. Yeah.
Well, I know that, church politics can get crazy, and my own, family's been through its share of church politics. And we've seen how churches can be, especially in small communities.
Right.
One ruffled feather almost isn't, you think you just ruffled one feather, but it kind of, there's a little, kind of domino effect.
Sure.
Like that.
As a whole in the community, though, I think we've had two people contact us No, I'm sorry, 3 people. 2 of them were married to each other. Contact us and say, disapprovingly of what we were doing as far as being Christians. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of the community and the country, I think I've had an email from each of the 50 states by now talking about, hey, we're Christians too, and we think what you're doing is awesome, has been positive and uplifting. So I'm sure there's plenty of other people out there who disagree, but by far we've been more encouraged than disappointed.
Yeah, and you actually hinted a little bit earlier about maybe your views changed. You weren't always looked at beer the way you do now. Was that true for your whole family or just for you?
That is a great question. I don't really know. I think that my mom's family, when she was growing up, not a Christian family, and beer was more of if you drank a lot, you were pretty much an alcoholic. That was the only issue there. Mm-hmm. My dad's family was more of a fundamentalist, strict family, and that's actually how I was raised early on. Even though I don't think a lot of my parents' beliefs at that time coalesced, that just kind of was convenient. As don't drink. It's a sin kind of thing. So, and so for most of actually, until after I had already started drinking, I wasn't really sure. I knew my dad didn't think it was a sin, but I didn't know if he drank. And he kind of told me he wanted me to make my own decision. And then he bought me a beer after I told him what my decision was. So, it kind of, my views have radically changed on a lot of things doctrinally and culturally in the last 5 years, maybe 7 years.
Interesting.
And I hope they continue to change as I learn and develop my thought processes. And for me, reading the Bible is a huge part of learning more about things I thought I knew about and realizing this isn't what it says.
Right.
So just, changing my mind on things. That's one of the ways I actually came to the point of beer isn't bad, because I was reading the Bible and found all these instances of alcohol being talked about as a gift and about a sign of blessing and about people using it. And, for goodness sake, Jesus made wine. So just delving into that, reading other people. So anyway, I hope my views continue to change as I read things. And
the story of Jesus is interesting, because when you read that story, they mention, they've run out of wine, and so he turns the water into wine, and then they say, wow, this is the best beer or the best wine we've ever had. Normally they put out, this is the kind of wine we would put out at the beginning of the party. Because at the beginning of the party, you put out the really good stuff, the high quality stuff. And then as these parties would go on, these wedding ceremonies, and I'm not even sure how long, wedding ceremonies lasted back then, but they would basically roll out just the crap wine, the bottom shelf stuff at the end of the party, because everyone's
probably feeling good.
Pretty much hammered, yeah.
Everyone's feeling good. And, Jesus rolls out so you're looking at what time of the day was this party, when everyone was pretty much, flying high at the time. And sure. Jesus gives them the best wine they've ever tasted. It's an interesting story. And there's also other stories. I don't know if it's Proverbs. There's other areas where it says that a little wine is good for the stomach, and digestion and stuff like that. So the Bible isn't against drinking, and nothing I found in the Bible says anything about condemning the act of drinking. It's drunkenness that the Bible condemns and looks down on. And I don't think anything I've read has even said, look down on the act of being drunk. It just doesn't approve of it. But the things like in Proverbs, it seems what I read is the acts that follow drunkenness. Like if you're drunk, you're going to be lazy. If you're lazy, you don't work. If you don't work, you don't put food on the table. You don't take care of your family. Kind of a,
more of a parable of consequences of showing, hey, you do this would happen. This will probably happen.
Yeah.
And there's a great book out there for any Christians who may be listening by chance, that are curious about what I'm saying, and any non-Christians who say no Christians really believe that alcohol is okay. There's a book called it's called What Would Jesus Drink? What the Bible Really Says About Alcohol, and it's by an author named Brad Whittington. You can find it on Amazon or anything like that. Anyway, it just goes through and basically he just takes every verse in the Bible that even mentions alcohol at all and says, is this positive, negative, or neutral?
Okay.
Is it just part of everyday life? And kind of breaks it down and says, here's what I found show me where it says that alcohol is evil. So
Nice.
just a book suggestion. It's real short. It's
Cool.
a tiny little book. But.
I'll go ahead and I'll put it into the show notes. And,
Great.
And I hope with the show, you said that, hope Christians are listening. I really hope that we have a good
diverse culture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that there's a good variety of listeners, because what we want to do with the show, I mean, I have had my own doubts, and I consider myself at this point leaning more agnostic, but believing in something greater than me. My wife and I just had a huge conversation last night over beer
Sure.
and wine. It was really great to have. But the point of this show isn't to basically have an agenda. It's all about bringing as many different worldviews to the table and just having conversations. So I know we've been a bit atheist heavy and in shows in the past, and I'm hoping to, as you'll kind of see with the guests we have, it'll be more of a balancing act, trying to make sure everyone's represented, because people come in, thinking that, oh my gosh, is this an atheist show? Is this an agnostic show? I'm hoping it's a show for people who are searching.
Right.
It's really the goal of the podcast. So.
Yeah, and I saw you tweeted the other day that of the different people you've asked to be on the show who are Christians, only one has said yes, and I was like, come on, guys. Are you scared?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I've had quite a few more feedback. I've actually Jay Baker may be coming on. We're working out the details, and then Mike Herrera will be coming on. And I'm still working on a few more. And of course, if you listen to last week's show, I had my father-in-law on, and that was 100% Christian show. So yeah, we're working on it. But yeah, it is interesting to see that and that's the thing. Like if you're a Christian, if you're listening to this and you're Christian, you shouldn't be afraid to just talk about what you believe. It's just interesting that because the thing is, with this whole like new atheist movement that's happening and everything, they're chomping at the bit to talk, and they're prepared, and that's just it's an interesting time that we're living in, where I can probably line up like 10 skeptics or atheists, and do 10 shows in a row, and they'll all be interesting. So I don't know why people are so afraid to talk about whatever belief they believe in, but it's an interesting time where a lot of skeptics and atheists are actually just ready to talk. So if you're Christian, step it up.
Agreed.
Joey, did you have anything else?
Well, I mean, if we don't want to go too deep, I was just more curious about theology. He mentioned,
we can go.
He mentioned Calvinism a little bit, and usually that means to predestination and a lot of different things. And it's interesting because the more I think Sean and I research and more we have guests on, and we look into modern scholarship, historical research with like, scholars like Bart Ehrman, even getting to more of the John Crossens or the Sprong or Marcus Borg. I mean, you get these different scholarly views that have complete different ways of looking at the Bible, historically and contextually, how, even homosexuality, that word is not even found in the Bible. It's what we put into it. It didn't mean what it did back then to what it means to us now. And then bringing that up too, like with Jay Baker, I know he's a pastor that's really strong for LGBT issues and marrying, same-sex marriages and stuff too. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on theology, because that's what we're all about. We want to have people have a platform right now to kind of share their heart, share your views on who Jesus is. And we did have that little statement of, the C.S. Lewis thing, is Jesus a liar, a lunatic, a lord? Or most scholars today, modern scholars, except the fundamentalist Christians, call him a legend. And I just kind of wanted to see where you kind of fall in with your theology, and if you'd like to share it with us.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. My theology would line up with, I'm not quite a literalist when it comes to the Bible. I believe there's much hyperbole and much, things used for examples. But I would say that I believe Jesus is Lord, is the Son of God, is the Almighty, and is what I would consider my Savior. I think he was a real person who was actually born of a virgin, lived a perfect life, and died at the hands of men, and then raised again 3 days later. So in a nutshell, that's what I would consider my theology. To Jesus to me, and what I believe is the truth was the Lord, the Lord, and the Son of God. So yeah, that's just kind of where I lie in that camp, and that in that field of thought. And I'd be glad. I mean, if you have specifics or questions why or anything like that, I'd by no means consider myself a scholar.
Right.
I do know what I believe, and I even have changed some of what I believe based on things I've read. But
Right.
yeah, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions or any topics you want to discuss. Absolutely.
As far as Jesus' ministry, like to you, what are the most important things that he taught in his ministry?
Yeah, I think that that Jesus' teaching to love each other is one of the most important things. It is the greatest commandment to love God above all and your neighbor as yourself. So I think that because I believe God is love, I believe God is wrath and a lot of other things as well, but God is perfectly love, that for us to love each other and other people shows what we really think about God. The way we treat other people is really the way we think about God. If we think that God is all-knowing and holy and sovereign and over us all, then we'll treat other people as if we actually think that God is in command and is watching and has mandated that we do those things. And if we don't think that about God, then we won't live that way. Not to say you can't do good things and be nice and things like that without believing in God. I don't believe that at all. But I think that at its heart, if you're a Christian and if you really believe in God as the God, I guess you could say, that the first thing people will be able to see in you is love, and the supreme thing people will be able to see in you is love, and understand why and where that comes from. So I think that's one of the biggest things, and also what Jesus taught us about the Father, about God's nature as a person or as a being or as a spirit or whatever you may want to say. I think that those lessons are immensely important for how we understand God. Some people who hate Christianity look at God as mean guy up in the skies who just point his finger and say, you can't do this stuff. I look at him as somebody who has, like a parent who has rules in place to make us not do things that are going to hurt us in the long run, and to help us see himself and love him supremely. So that's, I think that those are the kind of the important things, that we should love each other and love God, and what Jesus taught about the Father and about himself that are important.
Do you feel like the church, kind of the quote unquote church, I guess, misses the mark a lot on as far as loving others, or is it just like a small but loud splinter of Christianity?
I go back and forth on that.
Yeah.
I have a real I mean, the sect of Christianity that typically says, things like alcohol is evil, don't dance, you can't have music in church, or you can't have drums in church. Guys and girls can't look at each other before they're married and have 3 children, things like that. I'm being a little bit facetious, of course, but I have a real issue with that type of thinking, because I don't believe that's the way Jesus acted. The people who are afraid to talk to non-Christians and won't be friends with them and embrace and love them, like Jesus did, if we believe the Bible, that Jesus hung out with people who weren't Christians, who didn't believe in him, who hated God. Lately I have a huge issue with those people. I think that I think I don't know that that's a very vocal minority. I hope and pray that that's a very vocal minority. But unfortunately, I think that much of Christianity is more cultural than it is actual heart transformation and change. So especially that type of those type of people that I'm describing, what I would consider strict modern fundamentalists. Mm-hmm. Those are the type of people that I would say that we're talking about when we hear about what people would call hate mongers and things like that. I hope that the rest of the church isn't like that. I certainly hope I'm not like that, even though I'm not perfect. And I certainly hope that that not the whole world sees Christians as that, but I understand that is the reputation that some of those people have helped us earn. So I don't think it's the majority of Christians that act that way and seem that way. But I wouldn't be surprised to be proven wrong.
I really, I mean, with my own experience, and I've always been, I mean, drawn to like the Jay Bakers and people like that who talk about grace and love above all, and
Sure.
so that it's good, you know, and I find more and more people like that, and I hope so too, because I always felt, and that was part of my frustration when I was going through all my doubts and everything, was like I felt kind of alone in the, you know, I felt alone, and because a lot of people I would try to talk to at church, they didn't seem like they would have time to talk about this kind of stuff, or even, you know, want to bring up these touchy subjects. So I hope so too. I hope you're right. You know, it'd be nice to think that, you know what, this loud majority that we're hearing, especially bashing homosexuals and stuff like that, you know, I would hope that they're actually a minority, you know.
Right.
But,
and I'll just weigh in on the homosexual thing. And this is me speaking. This isn't Reclamation Brewing Company, of course. But I mean, my belief and what I've read and what I see is that homosexuality is wrong. But I'm the kind of guy that believes what Jesus said, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Mm-hmm. Even if I disagree with a style of life, like I disagree with people who steal from their parents and beat their wives, but I'm not going to tell them, you know, scream and yell at them and kick them out of my restaurant and beat them over the head with things, telling them God hates them. That, because if I do think that what they're doing is wrong, how am I ever going to love them? How am I ever going to show them what I believe? So even though I do think that, you know, just because we kept talking about homosexuality, even though I do think that, I think this is a sin, but I still can love these people and treat them like friends. I would say, I'm not a lot, but just because of my community, but I have a few friends who are homosexuals, and even though they know where I stand, they can still be my friend because I don't treat them like garbage. And I wish more Christians would get the point that you don't have to agree with somebody to be their friend. You don't have to agree with somebody to treat them like a human being. Mm-hmm. So, and I know that's a pretty to be negative against homosexuality but be pro the homosexual is a very is probably unique, or not unique, but a minority of Christians. But that's where I fall. Yeah. Well, personally,
you could look at it. You could look at it as, you know, we're all sinners, right? I mean,
right. Absolutely.
You know, I mean, I'm, you know, I daily can be considered a sinner just if you look at, you know, the Bible and everything and everything that it teaches, and, you know, if we're human, we're sinning every day at some point,
right?
You know, but we're all humans. And we all should take the time to understand each other as people, and approach each other as people, and as opposed to, you know, like just trying to condemn everybody. I think that's a mature approach, you know, is not to sling out condemnation. But cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we've been talking to Ben Smith, who is co-founder of Reclamation Brewing. I really want to try your beer now.
Absolutely.
So I guess we can't ship it across states.
Well, I actually did when you asked me about that, I actually did some research. I'm discovering there may be ways to do it that are legal, but I just have to continue, and I'll be sure to send you some if that's the case.
We will research that, and I'm interested in the, was it Promised Land?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that sounded amazing.
It tastes amazing.
What is you guys mentioned in your documentary, and we'll do this and then we'll close. What is the promise? Is it Promised Land Stout? Is it ale? Is it what is it?
We call it a Promised Land Ale. It's really something that we don't think we've ever had anything like it at all. It's a cream ale with definite hints and flavors of milk and honey. So it has some lactose in it, and of course a good bit of honey. As well as the typical beer ingredients, but it's a very light and refreshing beer with a lot of flavor, and it comes in at like or 8.5% alcohol content. So you got to be careful with it. But I love it. It's phenomenal. It's probably our most popular beer at tastings and things like that we've done. So
yeah, it sounds phenomenal. So.
And for the people that like me, like myself, that drink like lagers every day of my life, what would you recommend from your list of beers for me to try?
That's the closest. I mean, from Reclamation's beers, that's the closest beer that most of the people come up and say, "What would I like that you have?" And I say, "What do you drink?" And they say, "Miller Lite," and I'm like, "Nothing." But I'll usually hand them a Promised Land, and they love it. So Promised Land Ale is probably the one that most people can get along with well. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll look into that. I may just have to make a trip out there. I don't know. Someday, my wife's probably listening to this going, "No, you're not. You're not going to Pittsburgh anytime soon."
Well, if you get out here, we'd love to see you.
Yeah. If it happens.
Yeah.
Lord willing, as they say.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, thanks so much for chatting with us about Reclamation Brewing, about your personal faith. I really appreciate it. And I hope that the past 2 shows especially show people that, we're all about just having just open conversation with our guests. And, it's a good show. I'm really excited about the future of the show, and we have a lot of great guests coming up. I know that I said probably next week we'll be having Steve Wells, who wrote the Skeptics Annotated Bible. That hasn't been shipped out to me yet, so I'm still waiting for it. So I'm waiting till I get my hands on the thing, and I want to try to read some of his book before we get him on. So we're going to push that off. So next week, Joey and I are gonna have we're gonna shoot the shit and just talk things over about the past shows and just what's on our mind, and we're gonna attempt to do it live on YouTube. We'll see how that works. So it might be a fun experiment. Go to facebook.com/the AxPx to find out times when we will be doing that, or you can go to Twitter, the AxPx on Twitter. Ben, where can people find Reclamation Brewing Company on the interwebs?
Yeah, absolutely. They can find us at reclamationbrewing.com, facebook.com/Reclamation Brewing Co., or Twitter at Reclamation Brew.
Awesome. Well, best of luck to you, Ben. I'm really excited for the future of the brewing company, and I'm excited to eventually somehow taste those beers. Joey, where can people find you?
Oh, Twitter, Joey Avalos.
All right. Well, thank you all for listening to the show. Hope you had a good time listening to our conversation with Ben Smith of Reclamation Brewing Company. I'm Sean DeRager, and we'll talk to all of you next week. Bye-bye.
Tell you how I feel.